It's all for you. Yeah, yo. There whenever it matters, and even more when you feel like it doesn't. Protect you so you never feel like you wasn't. Know I'm right alongside you. Either that or I'm behind you, but always got you. End of discussion, nothing means more. First one to offer is shoulders for what you reach for. Thought I saw the eyes of the world until I seen yours. And know that I ain't see a better view yet. I'm with whatever, so don't ever you fret. Know that you covered, not a hurdle or a heartbreak. A change what a partake, cause none of them won't ever get comfortable in your walkway. My job is to aware you, fully loaded, prepare you for all of the above that I'm never letting get near you. But still in all, give you every advantage I found. Couldn't find a better fit for them, along with my crown. And since the baton was passed, I've been down, cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
Okay, let's cut one.
His musical hero, seen here in a rare movie appearance, was Roy Hamilton.
My chickadee, come here to me.
An obscure R&B singer who greatly influenced Elvis's vocal style.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Is Not a Noun, changing the narrative for men of color and fatherhood, as well as changing the narrative on the things I care about. And on today's episode, what I care about today is learning about a special man, a father, a husband that the world may not know, but he went viral on social media. And the quote said, "The man who inspired Elvis' voice." And I'm like, I want to learn a little bit more about this man. And the more I learned about this phenomenal man, I'm like, I want to do a podcast about this man. And the man's name, Roy Hamilton. Amazing singer. Also, he was a boxer for not too long, but he was a boxer. And I'm truly humbled and honored to have his son on, Roy Hamilton Jr. Roy Hamilton Jr. Sir, thank you for coming on. How are you doing, and how's your heart?
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. My heart is in good condition. I try to work out and I walk a lot, and whenever possible, I work out a little.
Okay, that's awesome. And the reason why I asked this question is, how's your heart? Because I'm a big advocate for men's mental health. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a strong believer of you have to ask certain questions, because sometimes as men, we'll say, how you doing? And sometimes people don't mean it. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to them, it goes through one ear and out the other. So when I say, how's your heart? I mean, like how are you doing mentally? Just how you doing mentally health wise?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I just think about it. I think the most thing that you could do to keep your health, your mental health in order is be in touch with your creator. Reading is always good, and also knowing what your purpose in life is. That's really most important to me.
And I think that's important too. And to just segue, because you answered my second question of what do you do to improve your mental health? And you answered that question for me. So we're going to segue into the next question. When you talk about, finding your purpose, mm-hmm. And I think your dad found his purpose.
Most definitely. In
music. So can you kind of talk about your childhood memory about your dad and his passion for music?
Sure. Well, as a child, I remember doing a lot of things with my dad. And when he, took the time to take us places like the World's Fair and places, like of that nature. And one of my recent memories of most distinct memories of him was when we rang in the New Year together in January 1969 at the Nassau Beach Hotel, and he brought me on stage and we sang together.
Oh wow!
Mm-hmm. It was an awesome day. So we rang in the New Year. The Prime Minister Penland was there at of Nassau, of the Bahamas, and at the Nassau Beach Hotel. We rang in the New Year that night, and we sang "Oh, When the Saints Go Marching In."
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he usually sang "Don't Let Go" along with that. So that was kind of like a medley. And he gave me the mic, and I sang along. I sang some of the words, and they gave us a standing ovation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's rarely you hear like dads that's in that career like take their sons on stage and sing. Do you think from that moment that kind of builds your confidence as a singer? Because you sing too.
Oh yeah, it definitely did. I was hooked from that moment on to be like him. To mimic him, and I listened to a lot of his music and all. Yeah, I was like, man, it's like I want to be like him. It was ever
Was there
since earliest recollection, like I want to be like my.
like private moments? Do you remember like as a child that he would sing to you before you go to bed, or did you guys have those moments, father son intimate moments where you guys just sung to each other? Can you like do you remember?
Well, it's really hard to remember a lot of things, but I do remember like if he was home, from off the road, he would talk, teach me how to pray, you know, help me with my prayers, or tuck me into bed, stuff like that nature. Um, yeah, those kind of were pretty distinct.
And like what's even though he passed away at an early age, what some of the life lessons did you learn from him? I know no, when he passed away, you were 7 years old. But is there a life lessons he taught you that you apply to your life as well as you teach your kids?
Well, I think that one of the main things that he taught me, he said he always used to tell me, make sure I took care of my mom, you know. And that was one of the things he used to always tell me before he went off to go on the road. Take care of mommy, you know. And that was one thing that I always did. I made sure, anybody mess with my mom, it'd be like, big trouble. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I always looked out for her. I would get up early in the mornings, and I make breakfast for her, and bring breakfast for her in bed, and stuff like that. You know, those are the things, especially after my dad died, because that was really a big, heartbreak in her life.
Definitely. And going back to mental health, like how were your mom and you and the family were able to just navigate through life, losing your dad and then your mom losing, her soulmate.
Yeah, it was really hard for everyone because my dad took care of the whole family. I mean, help, support financially and everything. And it was more than just our immediate family. It was cousins and friends, and you know what I mean. Everyone that came to the house, they would never go hungry or anything. If they needed something, my dad, would always give them whatever they needed. Oh yeah, go in the pantry and get something. And they would go shopping, in the little pantry we had, and bring food back to their families and stuff, my cousins and everybody. Um, he, like I said, he was a really big support of the whole family. And if anybody ever needed anything, my dad would definitely, reach in his pockets to help, whatever he was a very big support and supportive to a lot.
And like I know the big thing right now on social media is, Elvis being inspired by your father, like to a point where, if you listen to a song from Elvis, he, sounds like your dad. Um, the first time you heard Elvis, I don't know, like on TV, on a record, were you like, he sounds like my dad a little bit? Did you ever have one of those moments?
Well, I think there was always a little buzz about, around the house that, Elvis, emulated my dad. and he was, a big star. We used to watch a lot of his movies and listen to his music all the time. And think I remember the first time I listened to Elvis was probably on one of the broadcasts on television, probably maybe the Ed Sullivan, and yeah, he would be up there doing his thing. Yeah, well, he did get a lot of pointers from my dad, but they were good friends.
And I think that's important to talk about, because again, when you get a clip which was from a BBC documentary called Elvis: Birth of the King, you'll take a clip, you'll post it, and people run with it, and then people create their own narrative. So can you kind of talk about? Do you remember your father, talking about Elvis, kind of emulating him a little bit?
Well, I mean, being that I was only 7 years old, I could only think, but so many recollect so many things about what he said about Elvis. But I do remember when after he visited the tour, after he visited the record studio and he came back from Memphis, I remember him talking about and sharing pictures with us that he had taken at Graceland Mansion, and with Elvis, and that he had no negative points about Elvis at all. That they were good friends. He emulated my dad. He emulated my dad, and he also I would say took voice lessons from my dad.
And I think that's important too, because like I said, how the social media has a mind of its own.
Yeah,
People are going to tell a whole narrative on something, and they don't know the background of it.
right.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's important to understand that too. And then also, going back to, I think was it January 22nd, 1969, where Elvis came to the studio, what is it, the American studio in Memphis. That's when they first met.
Right.
And your Elvis is a big fan of your dad. And one of the ways that Elvis showed his appreciation to your dad was he gave him a song called Angelica,
Mhm.
which would be unfortunately, like his last single.
Right.
So talk about hearing your dad singing that song Angelica, knowing the story behind that. Does that kind of give you different emotions about it? Because you got Elvis song and your dad singing an Elvis song.
Well, yeah. So when they my dad was introduced to Elvis at Chips Mormon Studios, and Elvis was scheduled to record that evening, and my dad, of course, was recording during the daytime. So they had a whole bunch of songs slotted for my dad, and of course, a whole bunch of songs slotted for Elvis. So naturally, Elvis wanted to meet my dad, and being that he was in the same hometown, naturally he was like, man, this is a great opportunity to finally meet my dad. They went down there to the studio, and it was like it was just so magical that Roy Hamilton and Elvis Presley in the same room together, and they had a whole bunch of songs and everything slotted like Suspicious Minds, and my dad did a song called Hang Ups, which was similar to Elvis's um, um, that song he did Caught in a Trap or Suspicious Minds. Um, and they used the same musicians and everything. So when Elvis got this particular song, he said, "Man," he says, "Well, I think Roy, you could do a way better job than I could." And he passed off the song to my dad. And naturally, I mean, the emotion I get from hearing that song is it's a sad song, really, because for one thing, it's like I would say it's like a missed opportunity to the person that you love them or care for them. And I think that it's like what last night I meant to say, you know, I missed you through the day, but I forget it. I never said it. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So it's really a sad song, but my dad did an awesome job. I mean, singing that song. And
Yeah, he knocked it out of the park.
He did an amazing job singing that.
Like you when you hear that song, you just you hear the pain
Yes.
of what could have been.
Absolutely. I mean, everything that my dad sang, he sang it with feeling. It's like, I mean, wow. I mean, when you hear him singing something, you feel it too.
That is so true. That is so true, man. And just talk about when your father passed, and I read stories that Elvis, he sent flowers. Was it to your mom or your grandmother every month, just shows respect to the family?
Yes, yeah. He sent flowers to my mom for like 6 months after my dad passed away. But that's how much he cared about my dad. He almost considered my dad as a brother.
Wow.
But he lost his brother, uh, you know, years after, before, So he kind of figured, that he was close to my. I think I would feel that Elvis thought my dad was close to him as a brother.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. And talk about the just like the over time. Did he try to keep in contact with the family before Elvis passed away, or was it just sending the flowers as just a monthly? But was there any communication?
Oh yeah, well he sent like a telegram, telegrams. At the time they had the telegrams at the time, and he would send something like telegram or condolences to the family and this and that, and he he'd sent the flowers, and also he helped with the funeral arrangements to help my dad. My mom buried my dad because my father was had some financial difficulties because he found out he owed the government a lot of money.
Mm,
My my father's manager and the accountant didn't file his income tax properly and
wow.
sending the money. So he ended up owing the government, even though he would pay in money, but he was also trusted in his manager to do that, and they failed to do that. And when he found out he owed the government a lot of money, that kind of put a lot of pressure on him. And they came and they foreclosed on our house and all kinds of stuff. It was really terrible. So that put a lot of pressure on him, and that's probably one of the reasons it passed away, because of you know the heartbreak of all of that, after working so hard, and especially finding out that he owed the government $179,000,
Right.
probably pretty much all he had in his bank account or whatever. You know what I mean? Or rather, so.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. Like the people that you think you trust,
Mhm.
you would think would be doing the right thing, and they weren't.
Absolutely. And that's
You know?
pretty much what happened. And after that, and my dad, he had high blood pressure, and I think he drank a little, not very excessively, but
Yeah.
and smoked at one time. So with that, and with the hypertension and building, he had a cerebral hemorrhage, which caused a blood vessel to bust in his brain, and that's what took him out.
Wow, wow. And like how when you heard the news, like how was that feeling? Like I can't imagine, I can't that feeling is like, but how was that feeling like was to hear that news?
Oh man, telling me it was like devastating to hear. For one thing, we was already concerned about it because the night the ambulance came to take him out of the house, it was like, man, call the ambulance because dad is in some serious condition right now. He couldn't even lift his head. And when he did lift his bloodshot red, and he was like,
Right.
things was really happening. So they took him to the hospital, New Rochelle Hospital, and we were all there wondering and crying and carrying on because dad is sick.
Right.
So anyway, once he got there and everything, and I guess he was conscious for a little while, but slowly he started going into a coma. And we were able to. We wanted to visit, and they brought us to the hospital, but they wouldn't let us go up there into the intensive care area because
Right.
and we were kids. So it was, I think maybe he had gotten a chance to see him before, they had, pulled the plug on him or whatever, and it was like, it was like one of the worst feelings that could ever, come across as a child, because, losing your father is like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And matter of fact, that same day, it was, they had landed on the moon.
Right.
And so with that, some people, that kind of like shadowed over the fact that, my dad, was a famous, and so famous, but some people didn't even know he had passed away.
Right.
And that kind of overshadowed, the fact that he had passed away. And, but I mean, it might have been one of the most exciting moments in humankind history that, man walked on the moon, but it was the first day of my life, I'll tell you that.
And I can imagine that, being 7 years old and then your mom losing her soulmate. Like did any of the artists that he influenced reach out to the family?
Well, yeah, well, BB King is my godfather. You know, he was always well, they toured together and were good friends. So he was one of the entertainers that helped, with my dad's funeral arrangements, and Elvis as well. Uh, it was Brooke Benton, and um, Clyde Otis was another one of his you know friends, and they worked together as a musical team.
Right.
And he influenced a lot of other artists as well. But they chipped in to help a lot. But you know what? It was a little while before my dad had a headstone,
Oh
because
wow.
expensive. And that he hadn't even had a headstone for a little while.
Wow. Wow.
That's how tight it was. So I don't know really. I don't really know. I mean, being that I was only 7 years old, I didn't have all the details. But
Right.
rumor has it that a lot of people came to help, and help chip in to help bury my dad.
And it's important to understand that people that's listening, that how impactful your dad was to a lot of artists, that they came together to give your dad a proper burial, especially having a headstone.
Right, right. So we're standing at the casket, and Al Hibbler came up to me and said, he said, "Oh man, I loved your father." He was like tears
Right.
pouring down, and gave me a big hug. You know, so those are some of the memories. I mean, I've had, uh, of my dad. But like I said, that was one of the worst days of my life. I mean, it was even raining that day.
Wow.
It was terrible. But the life goes on. I mean, I think I turned out all right.
No, you definitely did, man. You carved yourself musically as an artist yourself. Just being you know, amazing person, being an amazing dad. So, you pretty did pretty well for yourself. And your mom and your dad, I'm proud of you, man. Like they're probably saying that all the time in heaven.
Well, thank you. Well, I think my mom, both of them had a big part in developing me as a child, and Dad just gave me enough, to just continue to carry on, And of course, when I got married um, in 1979 to my lovely wife Maria, and we ended up having three sons. And as a father, you know, work to teach them about their musical legacy, and to, like I said, take care of your mom, and work hard to, to get somewhere in life. And we continue to encourage them, and let them listen to the music, my dad's music, and I mean, whatever they was in the car, they heard Roy Hamilton.
Right.
Artists, that was like number one.
And I think that's important. And then also, I think was it going back to 2007, you started this campaign to, get your dad in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, and I think that's one way to keep your father's legacy alive and let people know, hey, my dad influenced a lot of people. You know, like
Right.
you know, you like you listen to Elvis, you hear my dad in Elvis' voice. So just talk about that the campaign.
Right. So like you said, when people hear Elvis says, man, well, Roy Hamilton, they said, man, that sounds like Elvis. You know, I said, no, that's not Elvis. That's Roy Hamilton. Or what you doing listening to Elvis or whatever? Oh, that's Roy Hamilton. You know? But it is what it, you know. You know, he was just so amazing. But you know, like I was telling you earlier, well, we had started the campaign in 1998.
Okay.
But, you know, we was always watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on television. I said, man, maybe Dad will get inducted this year. So, but you know, we weren't really, you know, uh, we didn't know anyone from there, or whatever. But then every year they would bring somebody up. Oh man, all these you know artists are getting nominated and getting you know inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it's like, man, so it dawned on us, Maria and I, to say, well, you know what? If he's going to get inducted, we're going to have to do something, you know. So we just started that website, you know, and of course, you know, I started doing more songs and you know doing talent shows and this and that, and we would mention about my dad and you know, oh, tell me a little bit more, you know, what we find more information about it, and so we launched the website, and then we added the petition so that people can know more about it.
And so, like, what's the goal amount to what's the what's the goal to reach?
Oh, how many?
Yeah.
Oh well, once you sign the petition, I figure as many as possible. You know, because I mean, it's really no limit because I mean, we're just going to keep on until they acknowledge and say, oh, okay, he's deserving to be in here. And a lot of the criteria is that he had influenced some other great influences, such as Elvis. I mean, you know, Elvis is one of the biggest influences that he had. I mean, as well as a lot of other artists too, as well.
So has the Elvis estate contact you to help you push this to tell this narrative about how your dad was a major influence in Elvis' music career?
No, no. We haven't really had contacted directly with you know Priscilla or Lisa Marie, but no direct contact as yet. But I mean, you know, I'm sure they've heard little things, you know, about what it is we're trying to do. But you know, like I said, we've always just tried to represent my father in a positive light, you know. And anything that came down the pike about Elvis and how he, you know, stole or emulated, you know, is I would say emulated my dad, but not stolen, because he, like I said, Elvis he was very talented, very talented. And I mean, if he didn't have it in him, he couldn't do it. There's
That's
so
true.
many people could really, you know, really get those notes out like my dad, you know, and even up to today, I don't think it's not many people who sing.
And I totally agree with you because like hearing his music, it's like his voice is like it's almost hard to duplicate that voice. You
Yeah,
know, you have to be a rare talent to emulate your dad's voice. Like when you talk about artists who has a distinct, unique voice that's hard to emulate, I think of like Donny Hathaway. Like
right.
like Donny Hathaway had his own unique sound. Like I've heard people singing Donny Hathaway songs. They were good, but there will never be anyone that'll be close to emulating that sound. And I would say the same thing about your dad. Like listening to your dad's music, it's like it's like it's pretty impossible to emulate that sound. Um, but before we end this amazing conversation, talk about what is your favorite? What's your favorite song by your dad?
Well, I think my favorite one. I mean, there's so many songs that he sang so well. I mean, I would say "You'll Never Walk Alone" would be my favorite one. Of course, that's the one that launched his career. And the lyrics and you know and the meaning of that song is, you know, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. You know, At the end of the storm is a golden sky, and and the silver song of a lark. So I mean, that really puts that into perspective. That I mean, just walk on. With hope. And you'll never walk alone.
And that's so true. And this was definitely a golden sky conversation. I appreciate you for jumping on. Before we end this amazing conversation, can you let people know the website, the link where they can go to support, getting your dad in the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Right. So to find out more information about Roy Hamilton, go to www.royhamilton.com. And I have a website, royhamiltonjr.com. And I've got a lot of songs on the web now, and all the music platforms, so you can check me out too as well. And of course, I mean, if you streamed on the YouTube, you see me up there somewhere.
That's right. And all those links will be in the description below. Mr. Hamilton Jr., thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on. And we're out of here. Have a good night. Peace.
Awesome.